daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Daily Premier League podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Nick Bird. We're here on the 22nd of October 2025 to discuss the Champions League football of this midweek, kicking things off with Arsenal's demolition of Atletico Madrid, where Arsenal gave Atletico Madrid their joint worst Champions League and European Cup defeat, a 4-0 defeat at the Emirates, and one from an Arsenal perspective that was incredibly satisfying. It was a game billed to be this battle of the defensive minds, but it was nothing of the sort from arguably either perspective. Arsenal really dominant in this game, and there was the hosts deserved a goal in the first half, but it just didn't quite come. Saka absolutely deserved to get a goal or assist from this game and somehow left the stadium without one last night. But it was a performance that really sent a message and laid a marker down in the Champions League, I believe, from an Arsenal point of view. And it kicked off inside the first 3 minutes where Arsenal could have had arguably 2 goals. As they hit the bar, Rice should have turned the rebound in. There was a chance for Saka, I believe, really early on. And it was a game going into that I thought Arsenal could suffer a weird 1-0 loss, but potentially Julian Alvarez just picking something special out of his bag. And he almost did on at least one occasion when he hit the bar in the second half. But apart from that, and then when Giovanni Simeone really should have scored with Ryan nowhere near his goal after he tried something a bit unlike him, I'll say, where he thought the ball was going to roll out for a goal kick and then it wasn't, and he had to quickly put it into the stands but couldn't recover quick enough, and Simeone just put it wide of the open goal. But apart from those 2 occasions, the Arsenal defence, the Arsenal goalkeeper were never threatened, although there was finally a shot on target against Arsenal for the first time in about 280 minutes, I believe. So congratulations to Atletico Madrid for that. I saw a quote from Koke after the game where he believed until the first goal that Atletico Madrid had the game under control, which I feel is almost a testament to Arsenal, that a team who basically had nothing going on for themselves in that game up until the goal still felt they had control just because Arsenal hadn't scored yet. But once that first goal came and Declan Rice delivered an unbelievable ball for Gabriel to head in, who probably won't get an easier goal all season, as Nico Gonzalez dropped too early to play him onside and then made it even worse when he didn't really try to head the ball as it came over him. So that put Arsenal in front, and then it was a very quick 2-3-4. Miles Lewis-Skelly with something that is sort of his trademark run now, is he got the ball, dropped the shoulder, and just ran through the middle of the Atletico Madrid team and laid it off for Martinelli, who couldn't put those shots in last year. But this time he had enough power, he had the placement as well, to put it into the bottom corner with a slight helping hand of Oblak, but the shot was too powerful for Oblak to put it past the post, and that's all you can ask from Martinelli, who has struggled in the last few years, but he tied the Brazilian goal-scoring record in the Premier League in 22-23 when he scored 15 goals, and a lot of those finishes were the sort of finish we saw last night, where it's that Thierry Henry-esque right-footed to the far post, opening up the body. But so if he's got that shot back down, if he has the confidence, which he seems to have as he started this season really well, Trossard is getting goals while not necessarily performing incredibly. He should arguably have more goals this season. And then if those left wingers, which is the evident weak spot of this Arsenal team, especially when Eze can't play there because of Ødegaard's injury, as I expect him to, then this Arsenal team looks even scarier, because that was an area of the pitch where the last season or 2 seasons you could just trust that they weren't really going to add anything to Arsenal's game. But then the third goal came, and it was a little bit messy for Giocarez. He was almost, I didn't know, he says it was because of VAR, but I think he was a little bit almost embarrassed about how the goal came about. It wasn't clean, it was deflected in past Black. But then just a few minutes later, his movement's great from the corner when it's delivered to the back post. Gabriel heads it back across goal, and he reads it well and beats his defenders to it, and he looks happier then. And for a player who's got a lot of criticism from inside but primarily outside the Arsenal fan base, I think getting that confidence going into a pretty big game at the weekend against Palace is going to be crucial. And it's a player who is working so hard at the moment for this Arsenal team without being able to get any rest, because the only backup is Mikel Merino, who you don't really want to play up front. And I was glad that Giocarez got some rest after the game was wrapped up last night, but I can't wait for Havertz to be back, and then you've got 2 very different strikers who can play for games that suit them and change the game if it's not going to plan. But at the moment, this Arsenal team looks incredibly scary on both the domestic and European front. And while there hadn't yet been a game where I think rival fans or neutrals were able to go, yeah, this Arsenal team's really serious, if they weren't paying attention to just how well Arsenal were playing, I think it was easy to go, oh, it's the set pieces again, this isn't sustainable, this isn't reliable. But the overall game is so much better than last year so far for Arsenal. So I think that really sent a message last night, and there's a real chance to do something this season for Arteta and his side. So I think it's fair to say that they look somewhat comfortably the best team in the Premier League at the moment, and that is one of the better Champions League performances we've seen so far this season in the 2.5 match days. So obviously we've got some big games tonight, but Arsenal look really strong, and we'll move on to the other 2 Premier League games from last night. But first we'll hear about Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
So Manchester City and Newcastle both won last night. Newcastle with a very dominant win against Jose Mourinho's Benfica, and it was only Dodi Lukebakio who really came close for the Portuguese team. He came close 3 times in the first half, twice before Gordon's opener, but once again after that. But apart from those chances, it was really comfortable for Newcastle. Gordon, with now the first person in Newcastle's history to score 3-3 in the Champions League. But weirdly, he has no Premier League goal since January, which came against Wolves. So I'm sure he'll be hoping for a goal very similar to the goal he scored last night, which was incredibly easy for him, as he just had to tap it in at the back post. And the other 2 goals, Barnes with a really good finish for the second after a long throw from Nick Pope, and Barnes kind of just held off his defender and then put it across goal, which obviously isn't easy to do. The third, the defence is a little bit calamitous. but it's still quite a strong finish from Harvey Barnes as Newcastle go and win the game 3-0, and they are 2 wins and a loss, and obviously the one loss came against Barcelona, which has them 7th at the moment. I imagine they'll move slightly down after tonight's games, but a strong start in the Champions League for them, and they'll be hoping it's an area where Gordon's goals will now transfer into the Premier League, because he has really struggled, like I say, to find that form in the Premier League for quite a while now. Barnes off the bench with 2 goals is obviously going to be really nice as well, because he feels like they're one of their big depth pieces, to put it in almost American terms. And their depth is quite weak, and they've struggled early on in the Premier League, and having those players who can come in and change games is going to be massive if they can turn their season around a bit. Then on to Manchester City. It was a much closer game than I think anyone would have expected. It was quite the dominant first half where they got their 2 goals, Haaland and Bernardo Silva, quite early on with their goals, but after that, there were chances for them to score again, but Villarreal came with the better ones, and they really had a chance to steal this in the second half. And Nicolas Pepe looks almost revitalised after he had that massive move to Arsenal for £72 million, but although he wasn't completely awful, he was really poor. So it's nice to see him kind of re-find himself, and that team, apart from 1 or 2 players at Villarreal who maybe shouldn't be playing football, looks quite an enjoyable watch. But they had 2 big chances and didn't take it, whereas City had 5 and clearly didn't take all of those. So City probably good value for the win, but these are the sort of games in previous years where you feel City would absolutely blow their opposition out of the water. So I think there's still some potential concerns about how good City actually are. They've had a quite nice run of games recently, but they will. The big tests are to come. They obviously managed to get a draw at the Emirates, but it's going to be interesting to see them against the best teams and how they can deal with that, because it does feel like Haaland's carrying them a bit. Doku has been really, really good though, but it doesn't feel like those standout players where you look across the team and you can't pick holes in any of them. I don't think that's quite the same anymore for Manchester City. They moved to 3. It's 3 wins and a draw. Obviously, I almost forgot they drew late against Monaco last time out. They really should be 3 wins from 3 in the Champions League, and they managed to get a little bit lucky with not having to face Napoli against 10 men. But I will remind you, Ken picked Napoli to win the Champions League, and they lost 6-2 to PSV last year. So I don't know if Ken is already regretting that pick. I'm sure the other Nick on the podcast will poke fun at him for that, and we'll see if he's changed his mind or if he's going to stick firm with that earlier prediction. I'm just trying to find if City have who City's big games are in the league phase. So they've got Real Madrid away in December, and then they don't really have another game where I look at it and go, that'll be difficult, because they have Dortmund, they have Bayer Leverkusen, both of those at home, then Real Madrid away, and then Bodo Glimt away and Galatasaray at home. So I think they should be fine for the top 8 from that, whereas they struggled a bit last year. But a good night for Premier League teams in the Champions League last night. We'll hear a bit about Zencastr, then talk about the Premier League Champions League games tonight.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out as the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone, AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the description to learn more about Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Two more Premier League teams to play in the Champions League tonight. Liverpool and Chelsea will kick it off with the London club. They face Ajax at home, who should be a relatively easy opponent for Enzo Maresca's side, as Ajax are fourth in the Eredivisie. They are winless in 3 games and have yet to score in the Champions League, conceding 6 goals in their first 2 games. And this should be a routine for Chelsea if they want to kind of show their level. Obviously, Cole Palmer is out for a while. There's been a few bright spots for Chelsea in recent weeks. Obviously, a massive win against Liverpool is kind of the standout result in there. But they got a comfortable win at the weekend against Nottingham Forest in Ange's last game. They're on a streak of 3 wins in a row. We'll see if they can finally stop getting red cards in this game. But this should be relatively comfortable. If they are struggling to score and just conceding against this Ajax team, I think there'll be some valid question marks about this team's potential. I think there was lots of talk early on in the season about can this Chelsea team go and challenge for the title, and I think we've already seen that is incredibly unlikely. I just think the 3 teams ahead of them are just better than them at the moment. Even with Liverpool struggles, you'd imagine they'll sort it out and still finish this season as a better team than Chelsea. Going back to Ajax, they have just 1 win in their last 6, and it came against a team with 10 men. So this is a team who aren't just struggling generally, but even the 1 win, it can't fulfill them with loads of confidence because it came against 10 men. Moving on to the other game, Liverpool travelled to Frankfurt, Hugo Ekitike's last club, Wirtz returning to play a Bundesliga team, and it is a team who have had possibly the weirdest start to the Champions League. They won their first game 5-1 against Galatasaray, but then lost 5-1 in their second game of the Champions League. They're a team who are really exciting, but incredibly bad defensively. They've conceded the most in the Bundesliga, despite being 7th in the league. Again, there's been so many players Frankfurt have managed to bring through, and they've seemed to be doing it again, and it's Can Uzun, this time a Turkish attacking midfielder who has 5 goals and 3 assists in 7 this season. He's going to be the one to look out for from a Frankfurt perspective, but from a Liverpool perspective, this should be a chance to rebound. If they don't win this game, you really wonder what questions are going to be asked of Slot and the confidence of this team, because this is a team they shouldn't struggle to score against. They have immense quality in attack, and although that Liverpool look concerning defensively, and they probably will concede in this game, they have to figure something out sooner rather than later if they want to retain that Premier League specifically. The Champions League has always been a big trophy for Liverpool, and they have struggled to start this year because that loss away at Galatasaray was a big problem. They looked really bad in it, and it's continued since then. So we'll see if Liverpool can return to winning ways. My mind thinks they will, but you almost just can't be sure about how the Liverpool team's going to perform every game at the moment. Will Salah get dropped because he's been so poor recently? Will Ekitike get the start as he probably deserves to after Isak's poor start? And Ekitike he changes games as soon as he's on the pitch. This is probably a good opportunity for Wirtz to get some confidence against a team he is familiar in facing, but then if he still doesn't really affect the game, are there going to be more questions there? So it feels like such an important game already, and we're just in the tail end of October, so some interesting games to look forward to from a Premier League point of view. I think the standout game tonight is probably Real Madrid versus Juventus of all of them. I don't think we'll have quite as many goals as there was last night in the Champions League, but I'm sure there'll be some standout games that people will be watching in both Real Madrid, Juventus, and I think Frankfurt, Liverpool is also going to be a very interesting watch because of the excitement of Frankfurt and the concern around Liverpool. So enjoy the viewing of the Champions League games tonight. I've been Nick Bird. It's been the Daily Premier League podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network, and I will be back with you tomorrow to discuss those two games and perhaps preview the Europa League and Friday Premier League game. So thank you for joining me and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.